All right, let's jump right in. We're going to travel back in time today, way back, like 2,500 years ago, to check out a really incredible period of intellectual and spiritual awakening in India. It was a time that sparked brand new questions and some truly revolutionary ideas. I want you to just imagine for a second that your world is in total flux. I mean, everything you thought you knew is shifting right under your feet. Well, that was the reality for people in parts of India back then. Society was just transforming at this unbelievable pace. And when things change that fast, it really makes people stop and think. They started asking these huge, fundamental questions. What is all this for? Why are we even here? What is the actual meaning of life? So, let's dig into the answers they came up with. So, what was going on that kicked off this incredible search for knowledge? I mean, what did this time of change really look like on the ground? Okay, so here's the breakdown of what was happening. You had these powerful new kingdoms, the Mahajanapadas, getting stronger and stronger. At the same time, brand new cities were just popping up, completely changing the social fabric. And this wasn't just a big city thing. Life was changing in the villages too. It was this massive, rapid shift that got thinkers really trying to make sense of their new world. And that brings us to our first major path in this whole quest for meaning, the story of the Buddha and his idea of a middle way. So how exactly does a prince become the wise one? Well, it was a very deliberate journey. This prince, Siddhartha, was born into a royal family, and he gave up a life of total luxury to go searching for real knowledge. And this wasn't a weekend trip. He wandered for years, debating and talking with other thinkers. But the turning point came when he decided he had to find his own path. He meditated for days on end under a peepal tree at Bodh Gaya, and that's where he finally attained enlightenment. And his journey as a teacher began right here, at this very stupa in Sarnath. This place is so important because it's where the Buddha, fresh from his enlightenment, gave his very first sermon. It's where he shared his wisdom with the world for the first time. Now, at the very heart of his teaching was the single, powerful idea he called tanha. The Buddha described it as a constant thirst, or a craving for more. More stuff, more satisfaction, more everything. He believed that this unquenchable desire was the actual root cause of all of our suffering and unhappiness. So this core idea of tanha then builds out into a whole philosophy for life. The Buddha taught that, life is full of suffering, and it's caused by our cravings. But, and this is the important part, there is a way out. He said we could remove this craving by just following a path of moderation. His teachings also really hammered home the importance of kindness, respecting all life, and this idea that our actions, our karma, have real consequences. And crucially, to make sure everyone got the message, he taught in Prakrit, the everyday language of the people. The Buddha was a master storyteller. Instead of just giving lectures, he would often use stories to make his points really hit home. And one of the most famous is the story of Kissa Gotami, which just perfectly illustrates his teaching on loss and suffering. So picture this. A mother, Kissa Gotami, is just overwhelmed with grief, carrying her dead son. She goes to the Buddha and begs him for a miracle. And he says, yes, he can help her. All he needs is a handful of mustard seeds. But then he adds this one condition. The seeds must come from a house where nobody has died. So Kissa Gotami goes from door to door. And of course, she can't find a single house like that. Every single family she met had known loss. And right there, in that search, she understood. The Buddha wasn't sending her on some impossible task. He was gently guiding her to a really profound truth, that loss is a universal part of being human. Okay, so at the same time the Buddha was teaching this path to end individual suffering, you had other thinkers who were exploring a totally different, more mystical kind of question. This brings us to the ideas of the Upanishads and the concept of a universal soul. These Upanishadic thinkers were really wrestling with what is permanent in the universe, what lasts. And they came up with two key concepts, the Atman, which is like the individual soul inside each of us, and the Brahman, the universal soul that fills everything. And the core idea, the big aha moment they had, was that ultimately these two things weren't separate at all. The individual soul and the universal soul were actually one and the same. And this wasn't just some abstract idea. It had real-world meaning, as a famous story from an Upanishad shows. A baker goes up to two sages and asks for food, but they refuse him, so he challenges them. He says, wait a minute, You worship the universal soul, right? A soul that fills everything, including me. So, by denying me food, you're actually denying the very soul you worship? And the sages realized, wow, he's right. And they shared their meal with him.
Now, let's look at a third path, one that was really different from the Buddha's middle way. This one embraced extreme discipline, Jainism, as taught by Vardhamana Mahavira.
The absolute foundation of Jainism is ahimsa, which is the rule of not hurting or killing any living being. Mahavira's teaching on this was so clear and powerful. All beings long to live. To all things, life is dear. This wasn't just, a nice suggestion. For Jains, it was the fundamental law of the universe. Following this path meant a level of discipline that is honestly hard to even imagine. To find the truth, you had to leave your home and live this extremely simple life. They followed ahimsa so strictly that even something like farming, which might harm insects in the soil, was often out of the question. They begged for food, they had to be absolutely honest, and they observed celibacy. For men, the past demanded giving up literally everything, even their clothes.
Okay, so we've got all these powerful new ideas floating around. But the big question is, how did people actually live them? Well, this led to new kinds of communities and social structures designed to put these philosophies into practice every single day.
And this slide shows a really key contrast between two models for how to live a spiritual life. On the one hand, you have the Sangha. This was an association for people who left home, and it was open to literally everyone, men, women, and people from all social classes. But on the other hand, you had the Brahminical ashrama system, which was a series of life stages mostly just for men from the upper castes. And in that system, women were generally not even allowed to study the sacred texts. So as these communities of monks and nuns started to grow, they needed permanent places to live, especially during the rainy season when they couldn't travel. This led to the creation of shelters called viharas, or monasteries. What you're looking at here is a cave monastery in Karle, a place literally carved out of rock where monks and nuns could live, meditate, and build a real, lasting community.
The kind of radical equality they practiced in the Buddhist Sangha is just perfectly captured in one of their texts. It compares the community to an ocean, saying that just like rivers lose their individual names when they flow into the sea, people who joined the Sangha left behind their caste, their rank, and their family to become one single unified community. It's a beautiful idea. So, after exploring these different paths, the Buddhist middle way, the Upanishadic idea of a universal soul, and Jainism's strict discipline, we're left to think about their legacy and really what they all mean for us now.
This incredible time of questioning 2,500 years ago gave humanity these profound new ways of thinking about life, about suffering, and about our connection to everything. And it leaves us with one last really important question to chew on. Which of these ancient ideas about the true meaning of life do you think we need most today?